Hello, I'm Ann Hunsinger. As the Executive Director of the Women's Resource Center of the Rockies, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening for our second annual virtual program. Our event this year is entitled Standing Together for Life. We have a great program for you this evening. You will hear from some special people, our prayer warriors, our Client Services Director Maggie, our special presenter Gary Freeman from Major League Dad, who is interviewed by Dan Burnett, who was our co-host with me on last year's program. And most importantly, you will hear from our clients, some who shared with you last year, and hear an update about them today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy the show.
Hi, my name is Nancy Guno, and this is Cindy Minders, and we are here representing the Summit County Prayer Room that was established by Ten Peaks Church here in Silverthorne, where everyone is welcome.
We are a group of women who love praying, and we love Jesus. Back in the summer, I had an opportunity. I was on the lake, a terrible storm came up. In the midst of that, my fight or flight reaction happened, and I got pretty fearful. And though we had done everything properly, what we saw was, in this situation, I cried out to God, what do I do? And immediately what I heard was, focus on me. What I'm seeing for these women here, for all of us actually, is when the storms come, we got to focus on Him. Our eyes have got to stay on Him, not on the storm, not on the situations around us, but on Him. And He always comes through. He always shows us exactly what we need. We love in the prayer room entrusting these women, entrusting each other, entrusting the people of Summit County to Jesus, because God can do the things that we can't even think of doing. He does impossible. He makes a difference. So to God be the glory. Thank you.
So I get to give you some quick updates at Women's Resource Center. A girl came in and wanted a pregnancy test, and when it was positive, she asked for all of her options. So we were able to give her that. She ultimately decided to keep her baby, and she was going to raise her child. Her parents are going to help her raise a child, and she's going to move back home. Actually, I think she did this past week. We had a girl come in, and I was able to meet with her. She wanted her pregnancy test. She, I think, had taken 4 pregnancy tests from Walgreens, and she just wanted to come in and confirm that, yes, it was positive, and it was. Then she asked if she could get an ultrasound, and I said, I need a minute, and I ran from the room and called our nurse. Unfortunately, she was not feeling well, and she didn't want to come in and infect anybody. So I thought, well, this happens to be the day that we're going to meet our Dr. Foley. He's going to do a site visit. He's driving up here from Colorado Springs, and I thought, well, he's never been here before. I've never met him, but maybe he'll do an ultrasound. So I called him, and he was on Wilkerson Pass, and he said, you know what? I'll be there in an hour, and I will give her an ultrasound. So all the things aligned, everything came together, and to me it was a miracle. He was able to come in, meet our client, her boyfriend, and after messing around on the ultrasound that he's never touched, we were able to go into the room, provide an ultrasound for this girl, and we were able to identify a heartbeat. We were very excited. She invited her boyfriend in the room, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And it solidified a decision for them to have their baby and raise their baby. What a miracle for everything that day. This was past Wednesday, to align, and we heard that she made a decision. So we're very happy for that.
Gary, it's pretty funny talking to you because you really make me think. And I wish other people could be in this chair so that they could feel the good vibe that you give. You're very accepting and very, very, like I was saying before, to be a humble leader is tough, and you really personify that. I'd like to ask you to go back a little bit about your family growing up. From the peanut gallery, it kind of seems like people want to know more about your past a little bit, because that really is your strength, clearly, is that what you've come through is what has made you the man you are today.
Oh, man. Yeah, this the grace that God has given through a lot of different scenarios. But I would say specifically with my father and dealing with just a different, I guess you could say, like anxieties that was kind of birthed out of different things. One specific instance, I was probably around 10 or 11, and I was in my room, and my dad comes in the room. There was a chair. He pulls the chair up. I'm sitting on my bed, and I think something just happened. Him and my mom had just got into an argument or something like that. And he sits down in the chair, and he looks me right in the face and was like, "You know you're a mistake, right?"
Oh.
And I was like, so imagine being just a 10, 11-year-old kid, and your dad just zeroes you in on, you're a mistake.
Yeah.
I didn't really want you here. You know, like you're kind of interrupting my plans. Because he was a pastor. He was, you know, pastoring the church.
Respected and all the things.
All that stuff, right? So in my mind, like hindsight, as a, you know, even now thinking through it and what that just brings up, right? I think that's an honest thing. And I feel like a lot of times too many guys aren't honest with what that feeling does to you, what it emotionally sets off in you. And then on top of that, what it manifests itself in later in different relationships. So that specific instance is what I mean by what I'm saying. If this is what it looks like to be involved with like church and pastors and Jesus, where
I don't want to have anything to do with it.
You can just openly say that
and
be okay with that and feel like you're actually doing something good to a 10, 11-year-old kid. That's tough. So I think being specific about that, and for me, it's taken me a while to be transparent about it. So that kind of manifested into a lot of my own marriage that I didn't even know certain things. But my wife, thank God for it, she's a tough cookie. She was like, I don't really care, big boy, how big you are. We're going to talk through these things. And I feel like being able to, you know, genuinely deal. That's what I call it. Like you have to have this urgency to genuinely deal. How that relates to what we do at pregnancy centers is we have to genuinely deal with what's in front of us.
With what comes in.
And those types of stories. So I imagine myself walking through the door, right? Being able to sit down with this guy, and yeah, she's got to get rid of it. It's in the way. I got goals, man. I got a career I'm working on. I got things to do. So I can't have this messing up what I want done. So immediately, if you can catch, that's where I pull. I'm a mistake, right? Hearing this from as a 10 or 11-year-old. So I'm in your way. When in actuality, like I said, we were able to reconcile, and I was able to ask him like literally that question. Why did you feel I was a mistake? Like what was I doing? He answered, man,
you broke the dish. You broke a dish.
I just started this church and at this new church, and I want to make this impression, and your sports were starting to get in the way. That's really what his answer was. So, because I played everything. So you can't tell, my favorite sport is baseball. And I actually was drafted by the Mets coming out of high school. But I went and played football because I was 6'1", 295. So kind of more equipped for football. But at the same time, when I think through that, like you were willing to make that statement because of your goal. So understanding
that's totally what it's about.
So it's like
that's totally what the Women's Resource Center is about. Is people making choices like that.
Yeah. So really understanding that from the standpoint of, man, like pulling from that just one instance of many. That's one that I clearly remember like yesterday kind of thing. You
Thanks
know?
for taking the risk to be transparent on that.
Oh, man, most definitely.
I think that's, it is really true that transparency is the key to big growth
Yeah, that's another thing in terms of, I feel like the space where the church enters, because if we're not trying to be transparent with who comes through the doors, then what are we really offering in terms of the gospel and what Jesus calls us to? So
and vulnerable. Do you think that in your own counseling cases and also with ones that you've watched, is the counselor being vulnerable the whole deal?
Yeah, yeah. That's something to kind of pick up on. That's as you're walking through with a client and you kind of hear his story, you start hearing certain things. You know, like I said, I'm just praying. You know, and like just praying to myself as he's talking, to be like, God, help me to hear what, you know, will spark where you can enter in. So if he says something about, you know, just flippantly about his past, but I hear that's a hot button, right? So if I hear that, I'm like, oh, so tell me more about that right there, if you don't mind, you know. So that's a part of just naturally being able to be keyed in on that, which that's what goes on here at the pregnancy center, right? So
it
that's
better
really
be
key.
what's going on.
Oh yeah, it is. I know it is here. So.
You remind me of all the times that I turn on the lights and the sirens on the rescue truck going to a rescue, and I'll get there and we'll be 20 minutes into it, and then I think, oh, I should be praying. I should have been praying when I flipped on those lights and sirens and started going.
Exactly.
I mean, we all could start praying a lot earlier than we start. Gary, tell us about when you've actually been in the right place at the right time, where you've seen it all come together for somebody that's opened up to you a little bit. You've been able to open up the door. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so specifically there's a guy, I know I'll never forget this guy. He's an amazing father now, but when we started, the original way this started was I wasn't at the center at the time. I was out doing something, and I get a call from our client services director saying, hey, there's this irate guy here.
Breaking stuff.
Oh, he's just going crazy. He's breaking earlobes with the 4-letter words he was using. So he's, you know, mean to all the volunteers, all this kind of stuff, right? So she was like, is there any way you can get here? Because if nothing else, I know she wanted just my presence. Yeah. Just to maybe we could just scare him off.
Calm him down.
Yeah, so I get there, and actually what happened was I missed him that day, but he came back for the ultrasound, which they had scheduled the following day with his girlfriend. So I was there, and he came in, and he was super short and just like still mean. And then I actually introduced myself to him. Yeah. And obviously, I thank God just because he gave me size for a reason. So his tone was a little different talking to me than talking to some of the ladies. But I just introduced myself. I was like, hey, man, I'm Gary, fatherhood coordinator here. You know, you're about to go back for the ultrasound. Would love to just chat up with you, man, just kind of see what's going on. So we get into the room. We're just talking it up. And again, I'm praying, Lord, show me. And he's very short. I'm asking him certain questions like, man, how do you feel about, you know, what's going on? So I'm really key about this. Like, okay, now you told me what I hear is you're telling me how you think she wants you to feel. But now I want to know how you feel. So that's something that is a key question.
There's the key.
So he kind of paused and just kind of looked at me and was like, dude, what's this dude getting at? So that opened up a lot in terms of what ended up happening was, long story short, it was about an 1.5-hour conversation. And thank God the young lady, she was super patient because she was like, yes, I need somebody to talk to this guy. But when he was in high school, he was from DC. His mom was an addict. And his dad had passed in prison. Oh. And his mom, one day when his sophomore year in high school, she just left and never came back.
Wow.
So he was the only child. So he's just in this apartment.
He was told he wasn't valuable a lot of ways.
A whole bunch of ways, right? So now he's just trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I got to live, right? So he's telling me this story, and he had a friend that his parents actually allowed him to just kind of hang around. And he figured out a way, he got a job, figured out a way to kind of survive, and he finished high school. Mm-hmm. Got himself into college, which is, he got into UNC Chapel Hill, which is how he got to North Carolina, and got his degree in business. And then he went and got a master's. I mean, so he's self-made, you know, that's how he feels, right? So he's telling me all this, and all I hear is my dad died in prison. My mom left me when I was a sophomore in high school. So I'm keying in on that, and then I'm seeing where he's self-made, right? He feels like I did it. I can beat my chest. Look what I did even without them.
Yeah.
So we get to a space where he
that
now,
worked for him for a while. That worked.
Oh yeah,
that worked for him.
as we can see. So he actually, because when he came to the pregnancy center, he was in a full suit. He was an executive for like a mattress firm type thing. So so he's doing good things, right? So then we get to, I'm like, so okay, so you're doing good. So why don't you want to your girlfriend to have this child? Because it sounds like you're doing pretty good. So he ends up going into like, I just, I feel like, what do I need that for? I'm still in my career. I'm still doing these things. And it's like, I probably could be a good dad. But so again, boom, I key in on that. I probably could be a good dad. So again, this is why I say the step in part. Because if all he knows is his dad behind bars.
Yep.
And then his dad died behind bars.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, I think you'd be a great dad. And he just paused. And I think he had just never heard that before. He was such a cutthroat guy that he was just, so for me to just be like, you'd be a great dad. Like, look at what God has allowed you to do. He's not a believer. So I just quickly just started talking like that because I'm like, I feel like this is a space where God, you're allowing.
You had a sense of it.
Yeah. So yeah, we started talking about that and I just started diving in on just his worth, what God has, who God created you to be. Like, look at all that he's graced you through and all these things. So by the end of this conversation, he's in tears. Because he's like just dealing with life, right? And now he's understanding like, man, I have made it through a lot, but it wasn't just by me. There was, if you backtrack his story, there was different people in high school that pretty much knew what he was dealing with, but still helped him. He didn't know. But then he gets to college and there's people, there's programs, there's things he got involved with, people helping him. Then he gets, this job where there's, people that are helping and that he's met throughout the way. You see, so it's not just you just did it. You start understanding that there's something more to this. So that guy, he ends up, we leave. He comes back again on his own. Mm-hmm. We have another conversation. And in this conversation, he was like, I think I can do it. I was like, do what?
Be a dad.
I want him to say it. I don't want to just assume, right? And he was like, I think I can be a father. And I was like, hey man, I'm willing to walk with you. Is that cool? Yeah. I'm willing to set you up with some people I know at this cool local church that'll walk with you. Because, I'm not long term.
Help make those resources available.
Exactly. So that's why I went back and called it like Pregnancy can be a great hub. Because we need local churches to be connected so that I can take this guy and be able to connect him into a local church that's willing to walk with him and show him, who God has created him to be, right? So, yeah, so I was really detailed, but on purpose because that guy is somebody that I love to this day because he still lives in Chapel Hill, doing great. I want to say that child it's a little girl. She's probably around, at this point, probably 6 or 7. But the fact that took some, we got to stick through this. We got to sit through some things. We got to talk about this. So yeah, that's what you're entering into. So when I say resources, when I say, mentors, men, people to invest, that's what you're investing in. That's where, adding the extra zero so that we can have more resources for these guys to be around, for the center to have resources, to have training, to have services, to, that's key. So why not?
Yep.
Like
that.
Yeah.
It ties into my little world of mountain rescue, because in mountain rescue we show up in big fire trucks with lots of cool apparatus to be able to do fancy rescues. The most valuable thing on those trucks is a little thing called the resource list that you can flip through and go, oh, I actually need to call the Army and get a helicopter, and here's the phone number. The resource list is the whole key in the serious rescue business.
Yeah, definitely.
In the Women's Resource Center, it's in the name.
Exactly.
I mean, this is, and boy, you are talking directly to all the churches in Summit County right now, and they're either watching you live or they're watching this video, and they know that everybody could work a little better on their resource list and have it tuned up.
Well, praise God, because we can all continue to work until the Lord either comes and gets us, or, you know, we always got work to do.
Wouldn't it be amazing if what God is actually doing is using these horrific times that we're in right now to shift things that way, to shine that light?
He's sovereign.
Yeah.
He's in control. So things hurt, and at the same time, I feel like there's decisions that we're making that I feel are really important and key for us to, as the community of believers, and, you know, those who are here being able to support this center. This is prime time to jump in terms of what God's will is.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
This is a cultural turning point in a lot of ways.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So, even going, if I can, real quick.
Yeah.
The step up.
Yeah.
My whole
go back to that
philosophy, I guess you could say, on stepping up, and this is something that, again, sitting across from a guy, talking through his situation, how he thinks, how he's viewed fatherhood, what kind of thoughts has he had towards fatherhood growing up, right? So again, this is where I can pull from my perspective. So I mentioned earlier, there were times where I wish I didn't have my dad.
Yeah, because he
made me feel.
He was hampering he was hampering you.
It was really, I didn't know how spiritually dark it was making me growing up in the house, right? So when I think of that, it's like when I hear just going to a men's Bible study or going to just different events and speaking at different things, and the first thing I hear is, man, we just need him to step up.
Yeah.
And that's just personally, that's like, kind of cringe a little, because we want them to step up, but they don't know how.
Yeah.
So that's another place where at a women's, resource pregnancy center, we need guys to step in to be able to walk with guys so that they can understand independence and their influence to step up and to be a part of the unit. Because eventually we want them a part of the unit that God created.
That family unit.
We don't want necessarily just a win in our column.
Yeah.
We want a win in God's column, right? So that's something that I feel like is really, really key. When I hear step up, what I hear is, I don't know how. So who's going to teach me? All right. Here's where we need you. We need resources for that. We need bodies for that.
We need mentors. We need mentors for that.
We need all of the above. We need everybody to answer D on the multiple choice test. All of the above, right? So we need that to happen. We need all of it. So again, cultural shift where I kind of get to see that. So wherever you are in the country, you can't run from that. And that's what I feel like is the thread that's running right now that we got a huge opportunity to jump into.
Because our culture is really in a bad place.
Starving. So and again, just because of opportunities I've been able to have, I like to talk to a lot of pro-choice people.
Yeah.
I'm weird. All right. So it's
not
something
so weird.
Where because I want to hear why do you feel like this is the thought? Why do you feel like this is the way?
Yeah.
And I feel like understanding, again, listening. We just have a massive opportunity to understand the influence of the men at the pregnancy center. So to make this like a specific thing, one of the taglines I like to always say in doing like a training or something is I want the car ride home for that guy to be comfortable. It's going to be weird, right?
Yeah, it's going to be weird for sure.
I want him to be as educated as possible, because no guy's going to know what an RU46 pill is. No guy's really going to know. Like, you're talking about trimesters. What is that? It's got something to do with 3. Yeah. What's going on? So I want him to leave educated and confident, because he's going to be the main influence when they're sitting at that light and they're waiting at a red light and they're trying to figure out, well, who's going to say something first. I want him to be as educated and confident as possible.
Wow.
So that's something where, again, we need resources. we need people, mentor. We need guys to step in to get trained, get educated on that, to be able to pass that along and be able to walk with guys, because he's that main influence to her.
I got another question for you that's off script. Not that we had a script, but another question for you is that what do you think the statistics really are in this country? I mean, I was reading in Micah. I was reading about how God got so tired of the foolishness that was going along that he turned his face. He just couldn't even. I mean, it's got to be getting to the point where the number of abortions that we're having, God's just going to turn away from us because of it's ridiculous. I mean, it's millions of kids are missing from the planet, and God doesn't like that. What you have been involved with, it really has been an honor to get to meet you, because you've set your life up trying to help men, trying to help babies, trying to help families, trying to have that picture of a family that works. Yeah. You're working for the right thing. I think that all of us could learn that lesson from you, to have something serious to put our lives into. Yeah. And I hope that you could say a final thing about that. Yeah, it is bad, but you're not a negative guy. You're saying, yes, we can bring the resources together, to use your word. We can bring the talent together and really make a difference.
Definitely. Yeah. I would say if I could sum it up, is I feel like how big do we really think God is? Like, we limit him
all the time.
We have our schemes, we have our things, we have our agendas, and we pray for God to bless those things. And I feel like sometimes he's like, do you really know what I want to do through you?
Yes.
Do you really know what I can do through this center if these people could come partner? You know what I mean? So I feel like the question that I always like to leave and want us to always think through is, how big is our God? Like, don't limit him. Don't limit what he wants to do as you think through and pray through giving to this center, giving to your family, giving to whatever he's called you to do. Like, really understand that to be a God that big,
he's big enough to deal with it.
How much he loves us. Like, that's key. So that's a part of, even when my story, like the fact that, I had this injury my senior year in high school, and I feel like he was like, hey, getting your attention. And really that put me in a place where I could actually hear him.
And now we're going to hear from the people who are most vital to our mission, our clients. And our mission is to provide life-affirming choices to women and to men who are facing unintended pregnancies here in our community. So I hope that you will see our mission being played out in their stories.
I definitely got through the I don't want to have an abortion stage, which I was so certain of when I first found out, like the first couple months. The thought of doing it by myself just terrified me. But then kind of realizing that wasn't going to be the best choice, having the option of adoption versus keeping the baby was kind of nice to know that there were two different routes I could go. And I still don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I just feel better about knowing that I'll carry the baby to term.
It sure has. It's crazy to think that here I am, he's 10 months old, and we're living back in Florida again with the birth father, which is amazing. So he's in our lives, and he's doing an amazing job, and we're just all so thankful and so blessed. There's nothing wrong with walking in and just seeing what's out there to help you. I had no idea how many resources were available for women in my situation, and I was just overwhelmed with how much help there is out there. And I think that you won't know that until you try. And so I think that they'll be very pleasantly surprised with how much that you guys have available to women with an unplanned pregnancy.
This is Benjamin Jr., and he's 10 months today. He was born November 1st last year, 2019. And I think one thing I wanted to say, you asked what the greatest benefit was, and obviously I can now say it would be my son. And I credit a lot to you guys. If I didn't have a private, confidential place to go have an ultrasound and really see what God was at work at, I don't know what path I would have taken, but now he's here.
And now there's just one more thing we'd like to share with you, how you can partner with Women's Resource Center of the Rockies to touch the lives of abortion vulnerable men and women here in our community.
Good evening. My name is Matt Schroeder, and I am a member of the Board of Directors and serve as Treasurer. On behalf of the entire board, our staff, our volunteers, and most importantly, our clients, I want to thank you for coming here this evening and standing together for life. Our mission in a nutshell is to save unborn babies and transform lives. To do that, we need a team, and you are part of that team. Without you, the center would not exist. Without you and the work of the Holy Spirit, we could not persuade abortion-minded women to come in and see us. Without you and the work of the Holy Spirit, we could not persuade abortion-minded women to view an ultrasound image of their unborn baby. Without you and the work of the Holy Spirit, we could not persuade abortion-minded women to choose life. And without you, we could not share the transforming gospel of Jesus Christ with abortion-minded women. You make it possible. You are our true heroes. Whether you have stood with us in the past or are new to our mission, we ask you to be as financially generous as you can and stand together for life. In addition to a one-time gift, we need monthly donors. If you are not a monthly donor, please become one. And if you are, we thank you and ask you to consider increasing your monthly gift. And now we ask you to fill out your response sheet. Your table hosts will be available to answer any questions, including how to do online giving and our tax-efficient ways of giving. May God bless you. May God bless the center. May God protect the unborn. Thank you and good evening.